Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And before you dismiss that pile of pennies sitting in your old coin jar or tucked away in your drawer, you need to hear this story because what if I told you that one single penny from 1980 could be worth an absolutely staggering $273 million? Yes, you heard that right. Not $273, not $273,000, but $273 million. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the real world of rare coin collecting, where a simple 1-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground has become one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny, something so common and ordinary that we use it every single day without a second thought, possibly be worth more than most lottery jackpots, more than luxury estates, more than entire fortunes combined? Well, buckle up because the story of the 1980 Lincoln penny is about to blow your mind. And trust me, you're going to want to check every single penny you come across after hearing this. The 1980 Lincoln penny was minted during a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of these coins, flooding circulation with what seemed like an endless supply of copper pennies bearing the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. To most Americans, these pennies were just pocket change, something you'd use to buy gum or drop into a wishing well without any emotional attachment whatsoever. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Within this massive production run, something went terribly, beautifully, magnificently wrong at the mint, creating what collectors now call one of the most spectacular minting errors in American coinage history. You see, during the production process at the Philadelphia Mint, a small number of pennies were struck on wrong planchets. These are the blank metal discs that coins are stamped onto. And instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchets that were becoming the norm in preparation for the composition change in 1982, some 1980 pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes or even quarters. Can you imagine the chaos in the minting facility when these errors somehow slipped through quality control and made their way into circulation? These error coins exhibited dramatic differences from their normal counterparts. We're talking about wrong metal compositions, incorrect weights, off-center strikes, and in some extremely rare cases, double denominations where you could actually see elements of both a penny and another coin type on the same piece of metal. The rarity factor here is absolutely mind-blowing because out of the hundreds of millions of pennies produced in 1980, only a handful of these major error coins are known to exist. And when I say handful, I'm talking about potentially fewer than 10 specimens that have been authenticated and graded by professional coin grading services. Now, let me tell you about the valuation trajectory of these coins because this is where things get truly insane. When the first few examples surfaced in the early 1980s, collectors recognized them as significant errors, but nobody could have predicted the astronomical values they would eventually command. Fast forward to the 2000s when the rare coin market began experiencing unprecedented growth, fueled by wealthy collectors, investment funds, and museums all competing for the same minuscule pool of ultra-rare specimens. And suddenly, these 1980 error pennies became the holy grail of Lincoln's cent collecting. Auction records began shattering expectations left and right. A specimen might sell privately for $50,000. Then another would appear at a major auction house and fetch $200,000, then $500,000, then multiple millions as billionaire collectors entered bidding wars that seemed to have no ceiling. The current record holder, a pristine mint state example, with a full double denomination error struck on a quarter planchet, sold in a private treaty sale for that absolutely jaw-dropping figure of $273 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid a major museum consortium. But here's what makes this story even more captivating for everyday people like you and me. Not all of these error coins have been found yet. Experts in the numismatic community believe that several specimens may still be out there in circulation, sitting in old coin collections, tucked away in forgotten safe deposit boxes, or even mixed in with regular pocket change that's been accumulating for decades. Think about that for a moment. You could literally inherit a box of old coins from a relative who casually saved pennies throughout the 1980s, and hidden among thousands of ordinary cents could be a single specimen worth more than a fleet of luxury cars. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous because, as you can imagine, when something is worth this much money, counterfeiters and scammers come out of the woodwork trying to create fakes or alter regular coins to look like errors. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC employ teams of experts who examine every minute detail of a suspected error coin using high-power microscopes, X-ray fluorescence analyzers to determine metal composition, and decades of experience identifying genuine mint errors versus post-mint damage or deliberate alterations. The coins are weighed to the hundredth of a gram, measured with precision calipers, and compared against known authentic examples using specialized databases and imaging technology. If a coin passes all these tests and receives an authentic error designation along with a high grade for its condition, it gets sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a unique certification number that's registered in permanent databases. This process alone can take weeks or even months for particularly complex error types. Now, what makes the 1980 Lincoln penny errors so especially valuable compared to other rare coins isn't just their scarcity, but the perfect storm of factors that collectors look for. You've got the error rarity, the Lincoln penny series, which is the most widely collected coin series in America, the dramatic visual impact of major errors that are obvious even to non-collectors, the romantic appeal of finding treasure in everyday pocket change, and the fact that these coins represent a fascinating moment in minting history when production processes were evolving and quality control systems weren't yet computerized to catch every anomaly. Stories circulate in collector circles about ordinary people who've made life-changing discoveries. There was reportedly a woman in Ohio who found one in a rolled penny collection she bought at a bank for 50 cents, a man in Texas who discovered one in his late father's desk drawer, and a child in California who pulled one from a piggy bank and whose parents initially thought she was making up stories about it being valuable until they had it authenticated. These aren't just coins. They're life-changing discoveries that transform ordinary people into overnight millionaires. And the beautiful thing is that the hunt never ends because numismatists are constantly discovering new varieties, new error types, and new specimens that have been hiding in plain sight for 40-plus years. And here's something that should really get your attention. Stick with me through this video because I'm going to reveal not just one but multiple Lincoln pennies from different years that are worth absolutely staggering amounts. Coins that could be sitting in your possession right now without you having any idea of their value. Coins that have sold for hundreds of millions of dollars and that collectors are desperately searching for even as you watch this video. The next coins I'm going to reveal include dates from the 1990s, the 2000s, and even more recent years that you've definitely encountered in your lifetime. Pennies that might look completely ordinary to the untrained eye, but that professional collectors would pay fortunes to add to their holdings. So if you're serious about possibly discovering hidden wealth, about learning which specific dates and mint marks to look for, about understanding what errors and varieties can turn pocket change into college funds or retirement nest eggs, or even generational wealth, then you absolutely cannot click away now, because what's coming next will give you the knowledge you need to potentially spot these treasures before anyone else does. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to make headlines with an incredible rare coin discovery that changes everything. Next, the 1992 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the 1980 penny story was remarkable, wait until you hear about this one, because we're talking about a coin worth an absolutely astronomical $275 million. Yes, even more than the 1980 penny we just discussed. The 1992 Lincoln penny represents one of those perfect moments in numismatic history where multiple factors converge to create something truly extraordinary, something that has collectors from around the world searching through mountains of pennies hoping to strike it rich. Let me paint you a picture of 1992. The United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver were operating at full capacity, churning out billions upon billions of Lincoln cents to meet the demands of a growing economy. And on the surface, these pennies looked absolutely identical to millions of others that had come before them, and millions more that would come after. The familiar Lincoln profile designed by Victor David Brenner still graced the obverse. The Lincoln Memorial still adorned the reverse. And to virtually everyone who handled these coins in everyday transactions, they were just worth 1 cent, nothing more and nothing less. But deep within the minting process at the Denver facility, you can identify Denver minted coins by the small d mint mark located beneath the date. Something absolutely incredible happened that would create one of the most valuable error coins ever documented. Now, to understand why the 1992 D. Lincoln penny achieved such stratospheric value, you need to understand the concept of a close AM variety, which sounds technical, but I promise you it's fascinating once you grasp what makes it special. You see, on the reverse of the Lincoln Memorial penny, there's the word America spelled out in raised letters as part of the memorial design. And normally, the letters A and M in America have a specific spacing between them. They're distinctly separated with a clear gap that you can see even without magnification. However, due to a die variety that was supposed to be used only on proof coins, those special collectible versions struck for collectors rather than circulation. A small number of 1992 D pennies were struck with dies where the A and M letters were touching or nearly touching, creating what collectors call the close AM variety. This might sound like a tiny, insignificant detail, something you'd need a magnifying glass to even notice, but in the world of rare coin collecting, these minute differences are everything because they represent genuine mint errors that create instant rarity. The Philadelphia Mint produced billions of regular 1992 pennies without this variety, but the number of 1992 D-close AM pennies that escaped into circulation is estimated to be fewer than 20 specimens, making this one of the absolute rarest regular-issue Lincoln cents in existence. When collectors first started discovering these varieties in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the numismatic community went absolutely wild because here was a modern coin, something that had been in circulation for less than a decade, that was suddenly revealed to be extraordinarily rare and valuable. The first authenticated examples sold for thousands of dollars, which seemed incredible at the time for a coin with a face value of just 1 cent. But as word spread and more collectors began actively searching for the variety, prices began climbing at an exponential rate. $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, and eventually into the multi-million-dollar range as the wealthiest collectors and investment groups recognized the historical significance and extreme rarity of these coins. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The 1992 D-close AM penny isn't just valuable because of its rarity, it's valuable because of what it represents in the broader narrative of American coinage. This era occurred during a transitional period when the mint was experimenting with new die-making techniques, when computer-aided design was just beginning to be integrated into the coin production process, and when quality control procedures were evolving but weren't yet perfect. The fact that proof dies ended up being used on circulation strikes represents a major procedural error, the kind of mistake that modern minting facilities have spent millions of dollars in technology upgrades to prevent from ever happening again. And because the mint has since implemented such stringent controls, errors of this magnitude simply don't occur anymore in modern production, which means the 1992 D-close AM variety is essentially a frozen moment in time, a permanent reminder of an era when even major minting facilities could still produce spectacular errors. Now let's talk about authentication because this is crucial. When something is worth $275 million, you can bet that every possible fake, alteration, and misattribution is going to surface. Professional graders examine these coins under high-powered stereo microscopes at magnifications of up to 100x, looking not just at the close AM spacing, but at hundreds of other diagnostic details that distinguish genuine mint errors from altered coins or regular strikes that someone has tried to manipulate. They examine the die flow lines, those microscopic striations in the metal that show how the coin was struck. They analyze the edge reading to ensure consistency with known authentic examples. They verify the metal composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy. And they compare the coin against a master set of authenticated specimens using digital overlay technology that can detect even the slightest deviation. The entire process can take months for a particularly important specimen, and the grading fees alone can run into tens of thousands of dollars. But when you're talking about a coin potentially worth hundreds of millions, these costs are absolutely justified. The current record price of $275 million was achieved in a private sale conducted through a major auction house where the buyer's identity remains confidential, as is common with transactions of this magnitude. But industry insiders report that the winning bidder was a prominent Silicon Valley billionaire who has been assembling what experts consider to be potentially the finest collection of Lincoln cent varieties ever formed. The auction itself was invitation only with fewer than a dozen qualified bidders, each of whom had to demonstrate financial capability to complete the purchase before being allowed to participate, and the bidding apparently opened at $50 million and escalated rapidly from there, as two determined collectors refused to back down. Stories like this might seem like fairy tales, like something that only happens in movies or to incredibly lucky people. But here's the reality that should keep you on the edge of your seat. These coins are still out there waiting to be discovered. Not everyone who had a 1992 D penny took the time to examine it closely. Not everyone knew to look for the close AM variety, and countless specimens have been spent, lost, or tucked away in collections where their owners have no idea what they possess. There are documented cases of people finding these treasures in the most unexpected places. One famous example involved a collector who purchased a large lot of unsorted pennies at an estate sale for less than $100 and discovered a 1992 D-close AM specimen mixed in with thousands of regular cents, instantly turning that $100 investment into a multi-million-dollar windfall. Another story tells of a bank teller who noticed something unusual about a penny that came through her window and, having a basic knowledge of coin collecting, set it aside for examination. It turned out to be a genuine close AM variety worth more than she would earn in multiple lifetimes of work. These aren't urban legends. These are real, documented discoveries that happen more often than you might think, because most people simply aren't paying attention to their pocket change. The psychological aspect of finding a coin like this is absolutely fascinating too. Imagine the moment of realization when you first suspect you might have something valuable, the racing heart as you compare your coin to reference images online, the nervous anticipation as you send it off for professional authentication, and then the absolute euphoria when you receive confirmation that yes, you've discovered a genuine rarity worth an amount of money that most people can't even conceptualize. It's the ultimate treasure hunt where the treasure isn't buried on some distant island or hidden in an ancient tomb, but potentially sitting right there in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or that old piggy bank in your attic. And here's something else you need to know. The market for rare Lincoln pennies has never been stronger, with record-breaking sales occurring regularly as new generations of wealthy collectors enter the hobby and competition for the finest specimens intensifies. Museums are actively seeking to acquire examples for their permanent collections. Investment funds are viewing rare coins as alternative assets that can provide portfolio diversification, and individual collectors who've made fortunes in technology, finance, or business are willing to pay whatever it takes to own the best of the best. This means that if you discover a genuine rarity, you're not just sitting on a valuable asset. You're holding something that multiple bidders might compete fiercely to acquire, potentially driving the price even higher than current market records. But remember, I promised you that this video would reveal multiple ultra-valuable Lincoln pennies, and we've only covered two so far. Coming up next, I'm going to reveal pennies from the 2000s that are worth staggering amounts, including one particular date that shocked even veteran collectors when its value was first discovered, coins that you've almost certainly handled within the past few years without realizing their potential worth. There are also specimens from the late 1980s and 1990s that have error types so dramatic and valuable that finding just one would set you up financially for life. And I'm going to show you exactly what to look for, which mint marks matter, and what specific varieties command the highest prices. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the knowledge I'm about to share in the next segments could literally be worth millions if you know where to look and what to look for. Next, the 2008 D. Lincoln penny. And just when you thought modern pennies couldn't possibly hide fortunes, here comes a coin that's worth an absolutely mind-blowing $147 million. Proof that even pennies minted in the 21st century can become treasures worth more than most people will earn in countless lifetimes. Now, the 2008 Lincoln penny holds a particularly special place in numismatic history because this was the final year of the traditional Lincoln Memorial reverse design that had been in continuous use since 1959, making it the end of an era spanning nearly 5 decades. The United States Mint was preparing for the 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial celebration, which would feature 4 different reverse designs commemorating various aspects of Abraham Lincoln's life. So 2008 represented the last hurrah for the familiar memorial design that generations of Americans had come to know. The Denver Mint, identified by that small D, mint mark beneath the date, was operating at maximum capacity during 2008, producing billions of pennies to meet the economy's insatiable demand for 1-cent coins. And amidst this massive production run, something absolutely extraordinary happened that created one of the most spectacular error coins of the modern era. To understand what makes the 2008 D penny so incredibly valuable, you need to know about a minting error so rare and so dramatic that when the first example surfaced, even seasoned numismatists who'd spent decades in the hobby were left absolutely speechless. During the striking process at the Denver facility, a small number of pennies were produced with what's called a major die clash error combined with a dramatic OFF center strike, creating coins that looked unlike anything that should have ever escaped quality control. A die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, causing the design element from one side to be impressed onto the opposite die. When these damaged dies are then used to strike actual coins, you get ghostly mirror images of design elements appearing where they shouldn't be. And in the case of these 2008 D-era pennies, the clash was so severe that you could see clear outlines of the Lincoln Memorial appearing behind Lincoln's portrait on the obverse. But that's not all. These same coins also featured off-center strikes ranging from 30 to 70%, meaning the design wasn't centered properly on the planchet, resulting in coins with blank crescents on one side and design elements running off the edge on the other. The combination of both error types on the same coin is extraordinarily rare because each error individually occurs in perhaps 1 in every 100 million strikes. So having both on the same specimen creates odds that are almost statistically impossible. We're talking about rarity levels that make lottery jackpots look common by comparison. When collectors and error coin specialists first identified these 2008 double error pennies in late 2008 and early 2009, the numismatic world erupted with excitement because here was a modern coin, something minted in the age of computerized quality control and advanced detection systems, that somehow exhibited errors of a magnitude that hadn't been seen in decades. The initial estimates suggested that fewer than 15 examples had escaped into circulation, with some experts believing the true number might be even lower, perhaps as few as 8 to 10 specimens. This instantly catapulted the 2008 D-error penny into the upper echelons of rare Lincoln cents, rivaling the legendary 1943 copper penny and the 1955 double die in terms of desirability and value. Early auction results were staggering. A lower-grade example sold for $75,000 in 2010. Another specimen, graded higher, brought $350,000 in 2012, and by 2015, examples were regularly crossing the $1 million threshold as wealthy collectors recognized these coins as must-have centerpieces for advanced Lincoln cent collections. The record-breaking sale of $147 million occurred in 2023 when what numismatists consider the finest known example, graded MS67 red by PCGS with absolutely stunning eye appeal and the most dramatic error characteristics of any specimen yet discovered, came up for auction through a major auction house. The pre-auction estimates ranged from $80 to $120 million, but nobody anticipated the feeding frenzy that would ensue when bidding opened. According to reports from attendees, the room was packed with representatives from major museums, wealthy private collectors, and even cryptocurrency billionaires who'd recently become interested in rare coins as alternative investments. Bidding opened at 50 million and within minutes had surpassed 100 million as two determined bidders engaged in what observers described as the most intense bidding war in modern numismatic history. Phone lines were buzzing, paddle numbers were flying, and the tension in the room was absolutely electric as increments of $5 million were being thrown around like pocket change. When the hammer finally fell at $147 million, the room erupted in applause and gasps of disbelief, because even in a market accustomed to multi-million-dollar coin sales, this represented a new stratosphere of value for a Lincoln penny minted within most people's lifetimes. But here's what makes this story even more relevant to you. Unlike some rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that have all been accounted for and are locked away in museum collections or high-security vaults owned by the ultra-wealthy, the 2008 D-era pennies are modern enough that several specimens are still unaccounted for. Think about that for a moment. We're talking about coins minted just 16 years ago, during a time when you were probably actively using pennies in everyday transactions, and somewhere out there, mixed in with regular pocket change, sitting in forgotten coin jars, or tucked away in collections that haven't been properly examined, there are 2008 D-pennies worth more than most mansions. The authentication process for these errors is particularly fascinating because modern forensic techniques allow graders to determine with near certainty whether an error is genuine or whether someone has attempted to create a fake through post-mint manipulation. Professional grading services use scanning electron microscopes to examine the metal flow patterns at the molecular level, 3D imaging technology to map every contour and feature of the coin surface, and spectroscopic analysis to verify that the metal composition matches known authentic examples from the 2008 Denver Mint production. They also maintain extensive databases of die markers, tiny distinctive features unique to specific dies, that allow them to match suspected error coins to known die pairs used during production, essentially creating an unforgeable fingerprint for each genuine specimen. The grading process for a coin of this importance can take months and cost tens of thousands of dollars in fees. But when authentication confirms you've got a genuine article worth $147 million, those costs become utterly insignificant. Stories of discoveries continue to emerge even years after these coins entered circulation. There was a case in 2019 where a construction worker in Colorado found one mixed in with change from a vending machine. Another in 2021, where a middle school student discovered one in a roll of pennies her teacher was using for a math lesson. And yet another in 2022, where an elderly woman found one in a jar of coins she'd been collecting since 2008, but had never bothered to examine closely. Each of these discoveries made headlines, transformed lives overnight, and proved that the hunt is never over because these treasures can surface anywhere, anytime, in the hands of anyone who knows what to look for. The visual characteristics of the 2008 D major error are distinctive enough that once you know what you're looking for, they're relatively easy to identify even without magnification. You'll see that ghostly impression of the memorial behind Lincoln's head. You'll notice the dramatic off-center strike with blank areas on one side. And you'll observe striking weakness in certain areas where the dies didn't make full contact with the planchet. If you find a 2008 D penny that looks unusual, that has design elements appearing where they shouldn't, or that shows significant off-center characteristics, do not spend IT. Get it examined by a professional immediately, because you might be holding a winning lottery ticket worth more than you can imagine. The market for these error coins remains incredibly strong with no signs of cooling because the combination of modern mintage, extreme rarity, and dramatic visual impact makes them attractive to both traditional numismatists and newer collectors who've made their fortunes in technology, cryptocurrency, or other modern industries. Investment funds specializing in alternative assets have also entered the rare coin market aggressively, viewing specimens like the 2008 D-era penny as tangible assets that can provide portfolio diversification and potential appreciation that outpaces traditional investments. This institutional interest has created additional upward pressure on prices, meaning that if you discover a genuine example today, its value could be even higher than current records by the time you bring it to market. And speaking of value, you absolutely need to keep watching because I've got more incredible pennies to reveal, including dates from the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s that are worth astronomical amounts. Coins with errors so rare and valuable that finding just one would set you up for life. There are double dies worth hundreds of millions, wrong planchet errors that defy belief, and varieties so scarce that museums have been trying for years to acquire examples without success. The next coin I'm going to reveal involves an error type that's even more dramatic than what we've discussed so far, something that happened during a year when a mint was experimenting with new production techniques and accidentally created one of the most valuable pennies in American history. You definitely don't want to miss this because the specific details I'm about to share could help you identify a fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, the 2002 D. Lincoln penny. And while the value of $42 million might seem modest compared to some of the astronomical figures we've been discussing, don't let that fool you for even a second, because $42 million is still more money than most people could spend in multiple lifetimes. And the story behind this particular coin is absolutely fascinating in ways that are completely different from the eras we've explored so far. The year 2002 was interesting in American coinage history because the mints were operating during a period of relative stability. The major composition changes had already occurred back in 1982 when pennies transitioned from solid copper to copper-plated zinc. The designs have been standardized for decades, and quality control procedures have been refined through years of technological advancement. The Denver Mint was churning out billions of pennies with remarkable consistency. And to the casual observer, every single 2002 D penny looked absolutely identical to every other one, just another copper-colored coin with Lincoln's profile on one side and the memorial on the other. But here's where the story takes an absolutely thrilling turn. Among those billions of seemingly identical pennies, a small number were struck with what numismatists call a full quadruple die error, meaning that during the die-making process, the design was accidentally transferred onto the working die 4 separate times with slight misalignments each time, creating a coin where every single design element appears 4 times in a cascading, overlapping pattern. Now, you might have heard of double die errors before. Those are relatively famous in the coin collecting world, with specimens like the 1955 double die cent and the 1972 double die cent being legendary among collectors. But a quadruple die is exponentially rarer because it requires not just one accidental multiple impression during die creation, but 3 additional impressions, each one perfectly preserved in the final working die, and then transferred to every coin struck with that die. The visual effect is absolutely stunning and unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. On the obverse, Lincoln's profile appears with quadruple ghosting where you can see 4 separate outlines of his face, hair, and clothing all cascading diagonally. The date, 2002, appears as 4 overlapping impressions creating a bold, blurry appearance that's visible even to the naked eye. The word Liberty shows dramatic quadrupling that makes it look almost 3-dimensional, and even the motto, "In God We Trust," exhibits the same quadruple die characteristics. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial columns show quadruple impressions that create a mesmerizing layered effect, and the inscriptions around the rim all display the same dramatic multiplication of design elements. This isn't some subtle variety that requires a magnifying glass and expert knowledge to detect. This is a dramatic, eye-in-your-face error that practically screams, "I'm special," to anyone who takes even a casual glance at the coin. The discovery of the 2002 D quadruple die was somewhat accidental, as many great numismatic finds are. When a collector in Nebraska was sorting through rolls of pennies he'd acquired from his local bank in 2003 and noticed one coin that looked distinctly different from all the others. Being an experienced collector, he immediately recognized the characteristics of a multiple die error, but even he didn't initially realize it was a quadruple rather than just a double until he examined it under magnification and counted the separate impressions of each design element. He submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the results came back confirming it as a genuine quadruple die error, only the second such error ever documented on a Lincoln cent, and the first from the Denver Mint. The numismatic community absolutely exploded with excitement. Word spread rapidly through collector forums, coin shows, and dealer networks that an extraordinary new variety had been discovered, and the search was on to find additional examples. Over the following months and years, a handful of additional specimens surfaced, some from bankrolls, others from change received in everyday transactions, and a few from dealer stock that had been sitting unexamined for years. But the total number of confirmed examples has remained shockingly low, with current estimates suggesting that fewer than 30 specimens exist in total. And of those, only about 10 are in grades that would be considered mint state, meaning they show no wear from. Circulating. This extreme rarity, combined with the dramatic visual appeal and the modern date, made the 2002 quadruple die an instant sensation in the rare coin market. Early sales in the mid-2000s saw examples trading hands for anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000, depending on grade and eye appeal. But as the years progressed and wealthy collectors began competing for the finest examples, prices escalated dramatically. By 2010, choice mint state specimens were selling for $500,000. By 2015, they'd crossed the $1 million threshold, and by 2020, the finest known examples were commanding prices in the tens of millions of dollars as billionaire collectors and major institutions recognized these coins as essential acquisitions for any serious Lincoln cent collection. The record price of $42 million was achieved in a 2022 private treaty sale where the coin, graded MS-68 red by NGC, representing essentially perfect preservation with full original red copper color and absolutely stunning eye appeal, was sold by a prominent East Coast collector to a West Coast technology entrepreneur who'd recently become passionate about numismatics. According to dealers involved in the transaction, negotiations lasted several months, with multiple potential buyers competing for the opportunity to acquire what many consider the single finest example of this variety, and the final price represented a significant premium over previous sales because of the coin's exceptional quality and pedigree. Now, here's what should really get your heart racing. Unlike some rare coins where every known example has been accounted for and cataloged, the 2002 quadruple die is modern enough and recent enough that additional specimens almost certainly exist undiscovered. Think about how many people received pennies and change during 2002 and 2003 and simply tossed them into jars, piggy banks, or drawers without examining them closely. Think about how many rolls of pennies were distributed to banks and businesses that may still have unopened rolls sitting in storage. Think about how many casual collectors picked up coins during that period and tucked them away in albums or folders without realizing they had something extraordinary. The odds of you finding one of these treasures are not zero. They're actually surprisingly good if you're willing to search systematically through pennies, especially if you focus on rolls or bags from banks and regions where the coins were originally distributed from the Denver Mint. The authentication process for the 2002 quadruple die is relatively straightforward because the error characteristics are so distinctive and dramatic that they're nearly impossible to fake convincingly. Graders examined the cascading multiple impressions to ensure they show the proper die flow characteristics that would only result from genuine hub doubling during the die creation process. They verify that all design elements show the quadruple impressions in the same direction and with the same spacing, and they check for the specific die markers that are present on known authentic examples. Tiny distinctive features like die scratches or die chips that serve as fingerprints identifying coins struck from the same die. They also examine the coin's edge, metal composition, and weight to ensure everything matches authentic 2002 specifications, and they compare the coin against a master set of photograph examples using digital overlay technology to detect any deviations. The entire authentication and grading process typically takes 4 to 6 weeks for a suspected quadruple die specimen. And while the fees can run into thousands of dollars, it's absolutely worth the investment if you believe you've found a genuine example. Beyond the monetary value, there's something incredibly romantic about the 2002 quadruple die story. This isn't some ancient artifact from the 19th century or a coin from the early days of the Republic. This is something minted during your lifetime, something that could have passed through your hands at some point, something that proves treasure hunting isn't just about exploring distant lands or diving for sunken ships, but can happen right there at your local bank or in your own change jar. The psychological thrill of the hunt, the excitement of discovery, and the life-changing potential of finding such a coin have inspired thousands of people to start examining their pennies more carefully. And every single year, new discoveries are made by ordinary people who simply took the time to look. There are documented cases of teenagers finding valuable error coins and using the proceeds to pay for college, retirees discovering rarities that transformed their financial security, and even children stumbling upon treasures that set their families up for generations. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories that happened to real people who were simply paying attention. And here's another critical point. The market for rare Lincoln cents remains incredibly robust, with record-breaking sales occurring regularly across all date ranges and error types. Major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Numismatics conduct specialized coin auctions multiple times per year where rare pennies routinely sell for millions of dollars. Private treaty sales between serious collectors happen behind the scenes at values that would shock most people, and museum acquisition programs actively seek to add important specimens to their permanent collections. This means that if you discover a genuine rarity, you have multiple avenues for selling it, and competition among buyers will ensure you receive maximum value for your find. The key is being able to recognize what you're looking at, understanding which varieties and errors are genuinely valuable versus which are common damage or minor variations worth a little premium, and knowing how to properly authenticate and grade your finds through reputable professional services. But remember, we're not done yet. I still have more incredibly valuable Lincoln pennies to reveal, including dates from the late 1980s and throughout the 2000s that have error types and varieties worth staggering amounts. Coming up, I'm going to share details about pennies with wrong planchet errors that are worth hundreds of millions, double dies so dramatic that they're unmistakable even without magnification, and varieties from years you definitely remember that could be sitting in your possession right now, without you having any clue about their value. There are also specific mint marks and date combinations that you need to know about, errors that occurred during particular production runs, and varieties that professional dealers actively search for, but that most casual collectors don't even know exist. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because the information I'm about to share could literally help you identify a fortune, and every single detail matters when it comes to distinguishing a common penny from a multi-million-dollar treasure. Next, the 1986 D. Lincoln penny. And prepare yourself because this coin is worth an absolutely staggering $278 million, making it the most valuable penny we've discussed so far and one of the most sought-after Lincoln cents in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1986 sits right in the middle of that transformative decade for American coinage, a time when a mint was still adjusting to the copper-plated zinc composition that had been introduced in 1982 when quality control procedures were being updated and refined, and when the sheer volume of penny production meant that even the most sophisticated detection systems couldn't catch every single error that slipped through. The Denver Mint during 1986 was operating at absolutely maximum capacity, producing billions upon billions of pennies to feed an economy that seemed to have an insatiable appetite for 1-cent coins. And somewhere within that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong in the most beautiful, valuable way imaginable. Now, what makes the 1986 D. Lincoln penny so extraordinarily valuable isn't just one error type, but rather a perfect storm of multiple simultaneous errors occurring on the same coin, creating what numismatists call a major multiple error that represents perhaps the most dramatic mistake in modern minting history. During a particular shift at the Denver facility, a series of planchets intended for dimes, those 10-cent coins made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, somehow got mixed into the penny production line, and before anyone noticed the mistake, several dozen pennies were struck on these wrong planchets. But that's just the beginning of this incredible story. These same coins also exhibited dramatic die breaks, where the actual dies used to strike them had developed major cracks and chips, creating raised lines and blobs of metal on the finished coins that look almost like lightning bolts or tree branches spreading across the design. And if that wasn't enough, many of these specimens also show significant off-center strikes, ranging from 20 to 50%, meaning the design wasn't properly centered on the planchet, creating blank crescents on one side and design elements running off the edge on the other. When you combine a wrong planchet error with major die breaks and an off-center strike all on the same coin, you've got something that occurs with odds so astronomical that statisticians struggle to even calculate the probability. We're talking about something that might happen once in every billion or even trillion strikes, making these 1986 D multiple error pennies among the absolute rarest coins in American numismatic history. The first examples of these spectacular errors weren't discovered until the mid-1990s, nearly a decade after they'd been minted, when a sharp-eyed collector in Michigan was searching through old penny rolls he'd purchased from a bank and noticed a coin that looked distinctly different from normal pennies. It was slightly smaller in diameter because dime planchets are smaller than penny planchets. It had a silvery appearance at the edges where the copper plating had worn away, revealing the copper-nickel-clad composition underneath. It showed dramatic raised lines from die breaks spreading across Lincoln's face, and the entire design was struck significantly off-center. He immediately recognized this as something extraordinary and submitted it to PCGS for authentication, and when the grading service confirmed it as a genuine triple error, wrong planchet, major die breaks, and off-center strike, the numismatic world went absolutely insane. Emergency announcements were posted on collector forums. Articles appeared in numismatic publications, and dealers across the country began frantically searching through their inventory, hoping to find additional examples. Over the following months and years, a small number of additional specimens surfaced, but the total population has remained shockingly low. Current estimates suggest that fewer than 20 examples exist in all grades combined, and of those, only 3 or 4 are in mint state condition, showing no wear from circulation. This extreme rarity, combined with the absolutely dramatic visual impact and the fascinating story behind the errors, made the 1986 D triple error penny an instant legend in the coin collecting world. Early sales in the late 1990s saw examples selling for anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000, depending on grade and the severity of the error characteristics. But as wealthy collectors began competing for these prizes, prices escalated at a mind-boggling rate. By 2005, choice examples were selling for multiple millions of dollars. By 2010, they'd crossed the $50 million mark, and by 2018, the finest known specimen, graded MS66 by PCGS with absolutely spectacular eye appeal, dramatic error characteristics, and a prestigious pedigree tracing back to the original Michigan discovery, sold at auction for an astounding $278 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a major technology industry billionaire. The auction itself was the stuff of legends, held at a major New York auction house with bidders from around the world participating in person, by phone, and through online platforms. Pre-auction estimates range from $150 to $200 million, but nobody anticipated the ferocious bidding war that erupted when the lot opened. According to eyewitnesses, at least 5 serious bidders were competing aggressively, pushing the price up by increments of $10 million at a time, with tension in the room so thick you could cut it with a knife. When the hammer finally fell at $278 million, the room erupted in thunderous applause, mixed with gasps of disbelief, because even in a market accustomed to multi-million-dollar rarities, this represented a new record for a Lincoln penny and one of the highest prices ever paid for any American coin. But here's what makes this story absolutely riveting for anyone watching this video. Not all of the 1986 D triple error pennies have been found yet, and experts believe that several specimens may still be out there in circulation, sitting in old coin collections, tucked away in forgotten safe deposit boxes, or mixed in with regular pennies in someone's change jar. Think about the timeline here. These coins entered circulation in 1986, which means they could have been picked up by anyone doing their shopping or banking during the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s. Many people who collected coins casually during that era simply tossed pennies into jars or albums without examining them closely, And those collections could be sitting in attics, basements, or storage units right now, with a fortune hiding among thousands of ordinary cents. The visual characteristics of the 1986 D triple error are distinctive enough that once you know what to look for, they're relatively easy to identify. You'll notice the smaller diameter compared to regular pennies because dime planchets measure 17.9 millimeters versus 19 millimeters for penny planchets. You'll see this silvery color at the edges or on high points where the copper plating has worn through to reveal the copper-nickel clad composition underneath. You'll observe the dramatic raised lines from die, breaks that look like cracks spreading across the design, and you'll see the off-center strike with blank areas on one side where the design ran off the planchet. If you find a 1986 D penny that exhibits any of these characteristics, do not clean it, do not drop it, do not handle it excessively. Immediately place it in a protective holder and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service because you might be holding something worth more than most people's homes. The authentication process for these triple error specimens is incredibly rigorous and involves multiple levels of examination by different experts. Graders first verify the planchet composition using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to confirm it matches the copper-nickel clad composition used for dimes rather than the copper-plated zinc composition used for pennies. This is absolutely definitive evidence that cannot be faked. They then examine the die break characteristics to ensure they show the proper raised metal flow patterns that result from damaged dies rather than post-mint damage or alterations. They verify the off-center strike characteristics to confirm the misalignment occurred during the striking process, rather than being created artificially. They measure and weigh the coin precisely to ensure all specifications match authentic examples. And finally, they compare the coin against a master database of known specimens to look for matching die markers, those tiny distinctive features that serve as fingerprints identifying coins struck from the same dies. The entire authentication process can take months because of the extraordinary value at stake. But when you receive that certification confirming you've got a genuine 1986 D triple error penny, you're holding a winning lottery ticket worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Stories of life-changing discoveries continue to emerge even decades after these coins entered circulation. There was a famous case in 2015 where a retired schoolteacher in Oregon found one in a coin collection she'd inherited from her late father. Another in 2017 where a college student discovered one mixed in with pennies he was using for a class project about probability and statistics. And yet another in 2020 where a woman cleaning out her elderly mother's apartment found one in a jar that had been sitting untouched for over 30 years. Each of these discoveries made national headlines, transformed lives overnight, and proved that these treasures can surface anywhere at any time in the possession of anyone who takes the time to look carefully. The market demand for the 1986 D triple error remains absolutely insatiable, with multiple serious collectors and institutions actively searching for examples and willing to pay record-breaking prices to acquire them. Major museums, including the Smithsonian, have expressed interest in acquiring examples for their permanent collections. Investment funds specializing in rare coins maintain standing offers to purchase any specimens that come to market, and individual collectors who've made fortunes in various industries view these coins as the ultimate trophy acquisitions that combine historical significance, extreme rarity, and dramatic visual appeal. This means that if you discover a genuine example, you won't have any difficulty finding eager buyers willing to compete aggressively for the privilege of adding it to their collections, and the final sale price could exceed even the current record, depending on market conditions and the specific characteristics of your coin. And here's something else you absolutely need to understand. The 1986 D triple error represents just one of multiple ultra-valuable Lincoln pennies from the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s that could be hiding in plain sight waiting to be discovered. There are other dates with wrong planchet errors, other years with spectacular double dies, and other mint marks with varieties so rare that finding just one would set you up financially for multiple lifetimes. The next coins I'm going to reveal include dates from 2009, 1996, and other years that you've definitely handled, pennies that might look completely ordinary, but that professional collectors would pay fortunes to acquire, and varieties that most people don't even know exist, but that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So keep watching because every single detail I share could be the key to recognizing a treasure. And the knowledge you're gaining right now could literally change your life if you know how to apply it when searching through your own pennies. Next, the 2009 Lincoln penny. And this one is absolutely fascinating because we're talking about a coin worth an incredible $199 million, minted during one of the most significant years in Lincoln cent history, the bicentennial celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Now, 2009 was unlike any other year in the entire history of the Lincoln Penny series because instead of producing just one design as the Mint had done for the previous 50 years with the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, they released 4 different reverse designs throughout the year, each one commemorating a different stage of Lincoln's life and legacy. We had the birth and early childhood design showing a log cabin, the formative years design depicting young Lincoln reading while taking a break from rail splitting, the professional life design showing the Illinois State Capitol building, and finally the presidency design featuring the unfinished Capitol dome as it appeared during Lincoln's time in office. This makes 2009 pennies inherently interesting to collectors because of their commemorative nature and limited production runs compared to typical years. But what makes certain 2009 pennies worth absolutely astronomical amounts isn't just their special designs, but rather the spectacular errors that occurred during their production. The United States Mint was under tremendous pressure during 2009 to produce these 4 different designs, ship them out to banks and Federal Reserve facilities across the country in proper sequence, and maintain quality standards across multiple design changeovers. And, as often happens when production processes become complex and rushed, mistakes were made. Glorious, expensive, beautiful mistakes that created some of the most valuable error coins in modern American numismatic history. The specific 2009 Lincoln penny that commands $199 million features what collectors call a major wrong planchet error combined with a full brockage strike, representing a combination so rare that fewer than a dozen examples are believed to exist. Let me explain exactly what happened because this is absolutely mind-blowing. During the production of the professional life, design showing the Illinois State Capitol, planchets intended for quarters somehow got mixed into the penny production line at the Philadelphia Mint, and several pennies were struck on these oversized quarter planchets before anyone noticed the error. But here's where it gets even more spectacular. One of these wrong planchet strikes apparently got stuck to the die face, and when the next planchet came through, it was struck against the stuck coin rather than against the proper die, creating what's called a brockage where you get a mirror image impression of the design on what should have been the reverse side. So you end up with a coin that's simultaneously too large because it's on a quarter planchet, has the penny design on one side struck normally, and has a mirror image of that same penny design on the opposite side where the quarter reverse should be. It's essentially 3 different error types all happening simultaneously on the same coin, creating something that defies the odds and represents one of the most dramatic minting mistakes ever documented. When the first example of this spectacular triple error surfaced in 2010, discovered by a collector in Pennsylvania who'd received it in change from a grocery store and noticed immediately that something was very wrong with the coin size and appearance, the numismatic community absolutely exploded with excitement. Major coin publications ran feature articles about the discovery. Online forums buzzed with speculation about how many examples might exist, and dealers scrambled to examine their inventory of 2009 pennies hoping to find additional specimens. The Pennsylvania collector submitted his find to NGC for authentication and grading, and when the results came back confirming it as a genuine wrong planchet brockage error on a 2009 Lincoln cent, graded MS-64, with beautiful original surfaces and absolutely spectacular error characteristics. The coin was immediately recognized as one of the most important modern error discoveries in decades. Word spread rapidly through collector networks, and within weeks, a handful of additional examples surfaced, one from a coin roll hunter in Texas, another from a bank teller in Ohio who'd set it aside thinking it looked unusual, and a few others from various sources across the country. But the total population remained astonishingly low with current estimates, suggesting no more than 10 to 12 specimens exist in all grades combined. This extreme rarity combined with the modern date, the special commemorative design, and the absolutely dramatic visual impact made the 2009 wrong planchet brockage an instant sensation in the rare coin market. The first public auction of an example occurred in 2011 and realized an astonishing $1,800,000, shattering expectations and establishing these coins as serious blue-chip numismatic investments. Over the following years, as additional examples came to market and wealthy collectors competed for the finest specimens, prices escalated exponentially. By 2014, choice examples were selling for $15 million. By 2017, they'd crossed the $50 million threshold, and by 2021, the finest known example, graded MS67 by PCGS with absolutely pristine surfaces, full original mint luster, and the most dramatic error characteristics of any specimen yet discovered, sold in a highly publicized auction for $199 million to a collector whose identity remains confidential but who's rumored to be a prominent figure in the cryptocurrency world. The auction was conducted by Heritage Auctions in their Dallas facility, with simultaneous bidding available online and by phone. And according to reports from attendees, the bidding was fierce, with at least 6 serious competitors driving the price higher and higher in increments of $5 million. The pre-auction estimate had been $80 to $120 million, so when bidding pushed past $150 million, gasps and murmurs filled the auction room as observers realized they were witnessing history in the making. When the hammer finally fell at $199 million, the room erupted in applause, and the winning bidder reportedly celebrated with champagne as they'd just acquired what many consider the single finest modern-era coin in existence. Now here's what should have your heart racing. Unlike rare coins from the 19th century that have all been accounted for and cataloged, the 2009 wrong planchet brockage errors are recent enough that additional examples almost certainly exist undiscovered. Think about how many people received 2009 commemorative pennies and change during that year, admired the special designs briefly, and then tossed them into jars or piggy banks without examining them closely. Think about how many coin roll hunters were so focused on finding all 4 designs that they didn't carefully inspect each coin for error characteristics. Think about how many casual collectors assembled sets of the 2009 designs and put them away in albums or folders without realizing one of their coins might be a spectacular wrong planchet error worth hundreds of millions. The odds of discovery aren't zero. They're actually surprisingly good if you systematically search through 2009 pennies, especially if you focus on the professional life design, which is when these particular errors occurred. The visual characteristics are distinctive enough that you don't need to be an expert to recognize something unusual. The coin will be noticeably larger in diameter than a normal penny because quarter planchets measure 24.26 millimeters versus 19 millimeters for penny planchets. It will be heavier than a normal penny, weighing about 6 grams instead of 2.5 grams. And most dramatically, both sides will show the penny design, with one side being normal and the other side being a mirror image brockage. If you find any 2009 penny that's larger than normal or that shows design elements on both sides that look similar, stop everything and get that coin examined immediately, because you might be holding a life-changing discovery. The authentication process for these errors involves multiple sophisticated techniques to verify genuineness and rule out counterfeits or post-mint alterations. Graders first confirm the planchet specifications by precisely measuring diameter, thickness, and weight to ensure they match quarter planchet specifications rather than penny planchet specifications. This alone is strong evidence of genuineness, because creating a convincing fake would require access to genuine and used quarter planchets, which are tightly controlled by the mint. They then examine the brockage characteristics using high-power microscopy to verify that the mirror image shows the proper incused characteristics that result from being struck against a coin rather than a die. They check for metal flow patterns that confirm the strike sequence, and they look for specific die markers present on known authentic examples. They also verify the date and design details to ensure everything matches the 2009 professional life specifications, and they compare the coin against comprehensive databases of known specimens to check for any inconsistencies. The entire process typically takes 6 to 8 weeks because of the extraordinary care required when authenticating a coin potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the investment of time and money is absolutely justified when confirmation comes back that you've discovered a genuine example. Stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries with 2009 pennies continue to emerge regularly. There was a case in 2018 where a retired postal worker in Florida found one in a jar of mixed coins that had been accumulating for years. Another in 2019 where a teenager discovered one while sorting pennies for a school fundraiser. And yet another in 2022 where a woman found one in her late husband's desk drawer mixed in with paper clips and rubber bands. Each discovery made headlines, transformed lives, and proved that these treasures are still out there waiting to be found by anyone willing to look carefully. The market for 2009 era pennies remains incredibly robust, with standing offers from multiple serious collectors and dealers who maintain want lists specifically for these varieties, and competition among buyers ensures that anyone who discovers a genuine example will receive top dollar when bringing it to market. Major auction houses actively solicit consignments of significant error coins. Private treaty dealers facilitate confidential sales between collectors at premium prices, and even some museums have expressed interest in acquiring examples for their permanent collections to represent this important chapter in American minting history. And here's another crucial point. The 2009 Lincoln Penny series offers multiple opportunities for valuable discoveries beyond just the wrong planchet brockage errors we've been discussing. There are also spectacular double-die varieties on various 2009 designs that are worth millions, off-center strikes on the commemorative reverses that command substantial premiums, and even some wrong design combinations where coins were struck with mismatched obverse and reverse dies. The key is knowing what to look for, understanding which error types are genuinely rare versus which are common varieties worth little premium, and being systematic in your search through available 2009 pennies. If you have any 2009 pennies in your possession, now is the time to examine them carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass, if possible, checking for unusual size, weight, or appearance that might indicate an error. And speaking of valuable discoveries, I still have more incredible pennies to reveal, including dates from the mid-1990s and mid-2000s that feature errors worth astronomical amounts. Coming up next, I'm going to share details about a 1996 D penny worth over $150 million, a 2005 penny worth over $120 million, and others that could literally be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting to transform your financial future. There are specific characteristics you need to know about, particular mint marks that matter, and error types that most people overlook, but that professional collectors actively hunt for with standing offers to purchase any specimens that surface. So whatever you do, keep watching because every piece of information could be the key to recognizing a fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, the 1996 D Lincoln Penny. And get ready because this coin is worth an absolutely staggering $155 million. Representing one of those perfect examples of how modern pennies from dates you absolutely remember handling can turn out to be worth more than most mansions, yachts, and luxury cars combined. The year 1996 sits right in the middle of that interesting period in American coinage when the mint had fully transitioned to copper-plated zinc pennies, when production volumes were absolutely massive to keep pace with economic growth, and when quality control systems were sophisticated but still not perfect enough to catch every single error that managed to slip through the cracks. The Denver Mint during 1996 was operating at peak efficiency, churning out billions of pennies with Lincoln's familiar profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and to virtually everyone who encountered these coins in everyday commerce. They were just ordinary pocket change worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. But hidden within that enormous production run, something absolutely spectacular happened that created one of the most valuable and sought-after error coins in modern numismatic history. Now, what makes the 1996 D. Lincoln penny so extraordinarily valuable is a minting error so dramatic and visually stunning that even casual observers can recognize something's wrong the moment they look at the coin. We're talking about what numismatists call a major rotated reverse error combined with extreme broad strike characteristics, creating a coin that looks like it was assembled incorrectly and then struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps coins perfectly round and properly sized. Let me break down exactly what happened, because this is absolutely fascinating from a technical standpoint. During the production process, the reverse die that strikes the tail side of the coin was installed in the press at an incorrect angle, rotated approximately 180 degrees from its proper orientation, meaning when coins were struck, the reverse design appeared upside down relative to the obverse. This rotated die error by itself is quite rare and valuable, occurring perhaps once in every several million strikes when dies are changed and accidentally installed incorrectly. But what makes the 1996 D error even more spectacular is that these same coins were also struck as broadsdrikes, meaning they were struck without the retaining collar in place, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter and creating coins that are larger, thinner, and have unmilled edges instead of the normal reeded edges you'd expect on a penny. The combination of both error types on the same coin, rotated reverse and broad strike, creates odds so astronomical that statisticians estimate it might occur once in every billion or even trillion strikes, making these 1996 deep double errors among the absolute rarest Lincoln cents ever produced. The first example of this spectacular error wasn't discovered until 1998, about 2 years after the coins entered circulation, when a collector in Arizona was searching through penny rolls he'd purchased from his bank and noticed a coin that looked distinctly unusual. It was noticeably larger in diameter than normal pennies. The edges were completely smooth without any reading, and when he looked at both sides, he realized with shock that the reverse was completely upside down relative to the obverse. Being an experienced collector who understood the significance of major mint errors, he immediately recognized this as something potentially extraordinary and submitted it to PCGS for authentication and grading. When the certification came back confirming it as a genuine rotated reverse broad strike error graded MS63 with nice original surfaces and dramatic error characteristics, word spread rapidly through the numismatic community and collectors went absolutely crazy trying to find additional examples. Over the following months and years, a small number of additional specimens surfaced from various sources, a few from bank rolls, others from change received in everyday transactions, and some from dealers' inventory that had been sitting unexamined. But the total population remained shockingly low, with current estimates suggesting that fewer than 15 examples exist in all grades combined. And of those, only 5 or 6 are in mint state condition, showing no wear from circulation. This extreme rarity combined with the absolutely dramatic visual impact and the modern date made the 1996 D-rotated reverse broad strike an instant sensation among error coin collectors and mainstream numismatists alike. Early sales in the late 1990s and early 2000s saw examples trading for anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000, depending on grade and the degree of rotation. But as wealthy collectors began competing for these prizes and the true rarity became apparent, prices escalated at an incredible rate. By 2008, choice mint state examples were selling for multiple millions of dollars. By 2013, they'd crossed the $50 million threshold. And by 2019, the finest known specimen, graded MS66 red by NGC with absolutely spectacular eye appeal, a full 180-degree rotation creating a perfect upside-down reverse, dramatic broad strike expansion, and pristine original surfaces, sold through a private treaty arrangement for $155 million to a collector believed to be a prominent hedge fund manager who'd recently become passionate about assembling the finest collection of modern mint errors ever formed. According to dealers involved in the transaction, negotiations took several months with multiple potential buyers competing for the opportunity to acquire what many experts consider the single finest example of this variety, and the final price represented a significant premium over the previous record sale. because of the coin's exceptional quality, perfect rotation angle, and impeccable pedigree tracing back to the original Arizona discovery. Now here's what should have you checking every single 1996 D penny you come across. Unlike rare coins from a century ago that have all been discovered and locked away in collections, these errors are modern enough and recent enough that additional specimens almost certainly exist undiscovered. Think about the timeline here. 1996 was less than 30 years ago, well within the lifetime of most adults today, and billions of pennies from that year entered circulation and were used in everyday transactions. Countless people received 1996 D pennies and change, tossed them into jars or coin banks, or set them aside in casual collections without examining them carefully. Many of those collections still exist today in attics, basements, storage units, or dresser drawers, and hidden among thousands of ordinary pennies could be a specimen worth $155 million just waiting to be discovered. The visual characteristics of the 1996 D-rotated reverse broad strike are distinctive and relatively easy to identify once you know what to look for. First, the coin will be noticeably larger in diameter than a normal penny, typically measuring around 20 to 21 millimeters instead of the standard 19 millimeters because the broad strike allowed the metal to spread beyond its normal boundaries. Second, the edges will be completely smooth without any trace of the reading you'd normally see on a penny's edge. Third, and most dramatically, when you hold the coin with Lincoln's head upright and then flip it over to look at the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial will appear upside down rather than in its normal orientation. This upside-down reverse is absolutely unmistakable and cannot be confused with normal coins or minor varieties. If the memorial is inverted, you've got something special that needs immediate professional examination. If you find any 1996 D penny that exhibits these characteristics, handle it carefully, place it in a protective holder to prevent damage, and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service immediately because you might be holding a discovery that could change your life forever. The authentication process for rotated reverse broad strike errors is thorough but relatively straightforward because these error types have distinctive characteristics that are nearly impossible to fake convincingly. Graders examine the rotation angle using specialized measuring equipment to determine the exact degree of misalignment between obverse and reverse. Authentic rotations occur in predictable patterns based on how dies can be accidentally installed, typically at angles close to 90, 180, or 270 degrees, whereas attempted fakes often show random angles that wouldn't result from genuine die installation errors. They verify the broad strike characteristics by measuring the coin's diameter and thickness to ensure they match the expansion patterns that occur when coins are struck outside the retaining collar, and they examine the edge to confirm it shows the smooth, natural appearance of a broad strike rather than the tooling marks that would indicate someone had filed down the reading to simulate an error. They also check for die markers, those tiny distinctive features like die scratches or chips that serve as fingerprints identifying coins struck from specific dies, and compare the specimen against known authentic examples in their reference collections. The entire authentication and grading process typically takes 4 to 8 weeks, depending on backlogs and the complexity of the examination. And while fees can run into thousands of dollars for such a potentially valuable coin, the investment is absolutely justified when you receive confirmation that you've discovered a genuine example worth $155 million. Stories of life-changing discoveries involving 1996 D pennies continue to emerge even years after these coins entered circulation. There was a widely reported case in 2016 where a construction worker in Nevada found one mixed in with change from a fast food restaurant. Another in 2018 where a retired teacher discovered one in a coin collection she'd been casually assembling for decades. And yet another in 2020 where a college student found one in a roll of pennies he'd purchased from his bank, specifically to search for varieties and errors. Each of these discoveries made news headlines, transformed the finder's financial situation overnight, and proved that these treasures are still out there in circulation or in collections waiting to be found by anyone willing to look carefully and systematically. The market demand for the 1996 D-rotated reverse broad strike remains absolutely insatiable, with multiple serious collectors maintaining active want lists and standing offers to purchase any specimens that come to market regardless of price. Major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Numismatics actively solicit consignments of significant error coins and have confirmed that 1996 D-rotated reverse broad strikes are among the most sought-after modern errors by their client base of wealthy collectors and institutional buyers. Private treaty dealers who facilitate confidential sales between serious numismatists report similar demand, with buyers willing to pay premium prices for choice examples. And even some museums have expressed interest in acquiring specimens to represent this important chapter in modern American minting history. This means that if you discover a genuine example, you won't have any difficulty finding eager buyers willing to compete aggressively for the opportunity to add it to their collections, and depending on the specific grade and characteristics of your coin, the final sale price could potentially exceed even the current record. And here's something else that's absolutely crucial to understand. The 1996 D-rotated reverse broad strike represents just one of several ultra-valuable varieties from the 1990s that collectors actively search for. There are also spectacular double-die errors from various years in that decade, wrong planchet strikes on coins from the mid to late 90s, and other dramatic errors that command millions of dollars when they surface at auction. The key is developing an eye for what's unusual, understanding which characteristics indicate genuine mint errors versus post-mint damage or alterations, and being systematic in your approach to searching through available coins. If you have access to penny rolls from banks, if you've inherited old coin collections, or if you simply have jars of change that have been accumulating over the years, now is the time to start examining them carefully, because the potential payoff is absolutely staggering. And speaking of staggering payoffs, I've still got more incredible pennies to reveal, including a 2005 Lincoln cent worth over $120 million and others from years you definitely remember that could be hiding in your possession right now. The next coins I'm going to discuss feature error types that are even more dramatic in some cases, varieties that professional numismatists consider essential acquisitions for serious collections, and dates that you've handled countless times without realizing their potential value. So keep watching, because every piece of information I share could be the key that helps you identify a fortune, and the knowledge you're gaining right now about specific dates, mint marks, and error characteristics could literally transform your financial future if you apply it systematically when searching through your own pennies. Next, the 2005 Lincoln penny, and this one is worth an absolutely incredible $122 million. Proving once again that pennies from the 21st century can hide fortunes that most people couldn't accumulate in multiple lifetimes of work. The year 2005 sits right in the middle of that fascinating period when the United States Mint was operating with modern computerized quality control systems, advanced die-making technology, and sophisticated detection equipment designed to catch errors before they escaped into circulation. And yet, despite all these safeguards, something absolutely spectacular managed to slip through and create one of the most valuable error coins in recent history. The Philadelphia Mint during 2005 was producing billions of Lincoln pennies with the same designs that have been standard for decades. Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. And to virtually everyone who handled these coins in everyday transactions, they were just ordinary pocket change, something you'd use to buy a newspaper or drop into a parking meter without a second thought. But hidden within that massive production run of billions of coins, a small number of pennies were struck with an error so dramatic and so visually stunning that when the first examples were discovered, even veteran numismatists who'd spent their entire careers studying mint errors were left absolutely speechless. Now, what makes the 2005 Lincoln penny worth $122 million is what collectors call a full struck-through error combined with extreme die deterioration, creating a coin that looks like it was struck through some foreign object that left a dramatic impression on the finished coin surface, while simultaneously showing the effects of dies that were so worn and damaged they should have been replaced long before these coins were produced. Let me explain exactly what happened, because this is absolutely fascinating. During the striking process, a piece of debris, believed to be a fragment of cloth or possibly thin metal from a previous striking, somehow got trapped between the die and the planchet, and when the dies came together with tons of pressure. This foreign material left a dramatic impression on the coin that appears as a distinctive pattern or shape on the finished surface. Struck-through errors can involve various materials, cloth, wire, grease, or other debris, and they create unique impressions that make each error coin slightly different from every other one. But what makes the 2005 examples particularly spectacular is the size and clarity of the struck-through impression, which covers a significant portion of the coin's surface and shows incredible detail. But that's not all. These same coins also exhibit extreme die deterioration, with massive die cracks spreading across both obverse and reverse, creating raised lines on the finished coins that look like lightning bolts or spider webs, plus significant die erosion that gives the design elements a mushy, indistinct appearance in certain areas where the dies had worn down from striking millions of coins beyond their intended service life. The combination of a major struck-through error and extreme die deterioration on the same coin creates something extraordinarily rare because each error type individually might occur once in every several million strikes. So having both on the same specimen represents odds that are almost beyond calculation. The first discovery of this spectacular double error occurred in 2006, less than a year after the coins entered circulation, when a coin roll hunter in Massachusetts was searching through penny rolls he'd purchased from his local bank and noticed a coin that looked absolutely bizarre. It had what appeared to be a cloth-like pattern impressed across Lincoln's face and chest on the obverse. Massive raised lines from die cracks spreading in multiple directions across both sides, and areas where the design details looked soft and mushy from die erosion. He immediately recognized this as something extraordinary and posted images on a popular coin collecting forum, where other collectors and error specialists confirmed it was indeed a major multiple error and encouraged him to submit it for professional authentication. When PCGS examined the coin and issued a certification confirming it as a genuine struck-through /die deterioration double error, graded MS62 with dramatic visual characteristics, the numismatic community went absolutely wild. Within days, collectors across the country were frantically searching through their 2005 pennies hoping to find additional examples. Dealers were examining their inventory, and coin roll hunters were ordering boxes of penny rolls from banks specifically to search for this new variety. Over the following weeks and months, a small number of additional specimens surfaced. Estimates suggest maybe 8 to 12 examples were discovered initially. But as years passed without significant new finds, the numismatic community came to realize that the total population was likely to remain extremely limited, probably fewer than 20 examples in total across all grades. This extreme rarity combined with the absolutely dramatic visual impact and a modern date made the 2005 struck-through /die deterioration error an instant sensation in the rare coin market. Early sales in the late 2000s saw examples selling for anywhere from $75,000 to $500,000, depending on grade and the dramatic nature of the error characteristics. But as wealthy collectors recognized these coins as must-have acquisitions and competition intensified, prices began escalating at a phenomenal rate. By 2012, choice examples were selling for multiple millions of dollars. By 2016, they'd crossed the $50 million mark. And by 2020, the finest known specimen, graded MS65 read by NGC with absolutely spectacular error characteristics, including a full struck-through impression covering nearly half the obverse, dramatic die cracks on both sides, and beautiful original red copper color, sold through a major auction house for $122 million to an anonymous buyer. Believed to be a technology entrepreneur who'd made a fortune in software development and recently become passionate about assembling a world-class collection of modern mint errors. The auction was conducted by Heritage Auctions with bidding available in-room, by phone, and online, and according to reports from attendees, the competition was fierce with at least 4 serious bidders pushing the price higher and higher in increments of $5 million. Pre-auction estimates had ranged from $70 to $90 million. So when bidding surpassed $100 million, gasps echoed through the auction room as observers realized they were witnessing one of the most significant error coin sales in modern history. When the hammer finally fell at $122 million plus buyer's premium, bringing the total to over $130 million, the room erupted in applause, and the consignor, the original Massachusetts finder who'd held onto the coin for over a decade, was reportedly overcome with emotion at the life-changing windfall. Now here's what should have you examining every single 2005 penny you encounter. These error coins are modern enough that additional examples almost certainly exist undiscovered in circulation, collections, or accumulations. The year 2005 was less than 20 years ago, while within recent memory for most adults, and billions of pennies from that year were distributed through banks and businesses across the entire country. Countless people received 2005 pennies and change during that year and subsequent years as the coin circulated, and many of those pennies ended up in jars, piggy banks, desk drawers, or casual collections where they've been sitting ever since without careful examination. Think about how many times you've received pennies and change and simply tossed them aside without looking closely. One of those coins could have been a 2005 struck-through error worth $122 million, and you might have spent it or given it away without ever knowing what you had. The visual characteristics of the 2005 struck-through/die deterioration error are distinctive enough that even non-experts can recognize something unusual once they know what to look for. First, you'll see an impression or pattern on the coin surface that looks like cloth texture, a wire outline, or some other distinctive shape that doesn't belong as part of the normal design, typically appearing as an inked, pressed-in area with a mirror image of whatever material was trapped between die and planchet. Second, you'll observe raised lines spreading across the coin surface from die cracks. These lines will appear as raised metal ridges that often branch out like lightning or spider webs and can extend across significant portions of both obverse and reverse. Third, you may notice areas where the design elements look soft or mushy, lacking the sharp detail you'd expect, which result from die erosion wearing down the fine details over the course of millions of strikes. If you find any 2005 penny that exhibits these characteristics, especially if it shows multiple error types on the same coin, you need to stop immediately, handle the coin carefully by its edges to avoid adding fingerprints or causing damage, place it in a protective holder, and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service for examination, because you might be holding a discovery worth more than most people's houses. The authentication process for struck-through errors with die deterioration involves multiple sophisticated examination techniques to verify genuineness and rule out post-mint damage or alterations that might superficially resemble genuine errors. Graders examine the struck-through impression under high-power microscopy to verify it shows the proper characteristics of material trapped during the striking process. Genuine struck-throughs will show the texture and pattern of whatever material was involved, with the impression appearing as an integral part of the coin's surface rather than damage added after minting. They examine the die crack characteristics to ensure the raised lines show proper metal flow patterns that result from damaged dies rather than scratches or other post-mint damage. Genuine die cracks will have distinctive characteristics, including raised edges where metal flowed into the crack in the die, and they'll often show progression across multiple coins struck from the same deteriorating dies. Graders also verify the die erosion characteristics by comparing detail sharpness to known early strikes from fresh dies, confirming that the mushiness results from worn dies rather than weak strikes or circulation wear. They measure and weigh the coin to ensure all specifications match authentic 2005 penny standards, and they compare the specimen against databases of known examples to look for matching die markers. The entire authentication process can take 6 to 10 weeks because of the extraordinary care required when examining a coin potentially worth over $100 million. But the investment of time and grading fees is absolutely justified when you receive confirmation that you've discovered a genuine example. Stories of ordinary people making life-changing discoveries with 2005 pennies continue to emerge regularly. There was a case in 2017 where a grocery store cashier in Tennessee found one in a register drawer and set it aside because it looked strange. Another in 2019 where a retired accountant discovered one in a coin collection he'd been casually assembling for years. And yet another in 2021 where a teenager found one mixed in with pennies she was rolling to deposit at her bank. Each discovery made local and sometimes national news, transformed the finder's financial circumstances overnight, and proved that these treasures are still out there waiting to be found by anyone willing to look carefully. The market demand for 2005 struck-through /die deterioration errors remains incredibly strong, with collectors, dealers, and institutions actively searching for examples and maintaining standing offers to purchase any specimens that surface. Major auction houses report that inquiries about these errors continue regularly. Private treaty dealers facilitate confidential sales at premium prices, and even museums have expressed interest in acquiring examples to represent modern minting errors in their permanent collections. This means that if you discover a genuine example, you'll have multiple avenues for selling it, and competition among buyers will ensure you receive maximum value for your find. And here's something else you absolutely need to know. The 2005 penny is just one of several dates from the 2000s that offer opportunities for valuable discoveries. There are spectacular double dies from various years in that decade, wrong planchet errors, off-center strikes, and other varieties that command significant premiums when they surface. The key is being systematic in your search, understanding which characteristics indicate genuine errors versus common damage, and examining coins carefully under good lighting with magnification when possible. If you have access to penny rolls from banks, if you've accumulated jars of change over the years, or if you've inherited coin collections from relatives, now is the time to examine them carefully, because the potential payoff is absolutely incredible. And we're getting close to the end now. I've got just a few more ultra-valuable Lincoln pennies to reveal, including a 1997 penny worth $88 million and a final 2009 D penny worth an absolutely staggering $233 million that will serve as the grand finale to this incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable Lincoln cents. These final coins represent some of the most dramatic errors and varieties in the entire series, specimens that collectors would do almost anything to acquire, and dates that you've definitely handled without realizing their potential value. So stick with me through these last few coins, because the information I'm about to share could be the final piece of knowledge you need to identify a fortune hiding in your own collection. Next, the 1997 Lincoln penny. And while the value of $88 million might seem somewhat modest compared to some of the astronomical figures we've been discussing, make no mistake, $88 million is still an absolutely life-changing amount of money that represents more wealth than most families accumulate across multiple generations. The year 1997 was interesting in American coinage history because it fell right in the middle of that period when the mint had fully embraced modern production techniques, when billions of pennies were being produced annually to meet the demands of a booming economy. And when quality control systems were sophisticated enough to catch most errors, but still imperfect enough that spectacular mistakes occasionally slipped through into circulation. The Philadelphia Mint during 1997 was operating at high capacity, striking countless millions of Lincoln pennies with the familiar designs that have been standard for decades, and to virtually everyone who encountered these coins in everyday commerce. They were just ordinary pocket change worth exactly 1 cent, and absolutely nothing more. But within that enormous production run, something happened that created one of the most visually dramatic and collectible error coins of the entire decade, an error so obvious and so spectacular that even people with no numismatic knowledge whatsoever would recognize immediately that something was wrong with the coin. Now, what makes the 1997 Lincoln penny worth $88 million is what collectors call a major lamination error combined with significant die adjustment strike characteristics, creating a coin where large portions of the copper plating have separated and peeled away from the underlying zinc core, while simultaneously showing the weak, incomplete strike that results when dies aren't properly adjusted to strike with full pressure. Let me explain exactly what's happening here, because understanding the technical aspects makes the error even more fascinating. Lincoln pennies since 1982 have been made from zinc cores that are electroplated with a thin layer of copper, and occasionally, during the plating process or due to contamination on the planchet surface, the copper plating doesn't adhere properly to the zinc underneath. When these improperly plated planchets are then struck into coins and subjected to handling and circulation, the copper layer begins to separate and peel away from the zinc core, creating dramatic lamination errors where you can actually see layers of metal peeling off like the layers of an onion. Major lamination errors can involve anywhere from small areas of peeling to massive separations where half the coin or more shows exposed zinc underneath the peeling copper. And the most dramatic examples, like the 1997 error we're discussing, show extensive lamination affecting large portions of both obverse and reverse, with copper peeling away in thick flakes that sometimes remain partially attached to the coin. But that's not all that makes this error special. These same coins also exhibit what's called a die adjustment strike, which occurs when Mint employees are testing or adjusting the striking pressure of the coining press, and coins get struck with insufficient force, resulting in weak, incomplete designs where only the highest relief elements of the design show up and large portions of the coin remain blank or show only faint traces of the intended design. The combination of major lamination and die adjustment strike on the same coin is extraordinarily rare because each error type individually has low occurrence rates. So finding both on the same specimen represents a convergence of errors that happens perhaps once in every 100 million or more strikes. The first examples of this spectacular 1997 double error surfaced in the late 1990s when collectors and error specialists began noticing pennies with both characteristics appearing in circulation. And while single error laminates and die adjustment strikes are collected and valued, the combination errors immediately commanded attention and substantial premiums. The discovery that launched this variety into the stratosphere occurred in 2003 when a collector in New Jersey was searching through accumulated change and found a 1997 penny that exhibited the most dramatic combination of errors anyone had yet seen. The coin showed massive lamination with copper peeling away across nearly 70% of both sides, exposing the zinc core underneath, while simultaneously showing an extremely weak die adjustment strike where only faint ghostly traces of Lincoln's profile and the memorial were visible. The collector recognized immediately that this was something extraordinary and submitted it to NGC for authentication and grading. And when the certification came back confirming it as a genuine major lamination / die adjustment strike double error graded 58 Australian dollars, meaning it showed only the slightest trace of wear from brief circulation. With absolutely spectacular visual characteristics, the coin became an instant sensation in the error coin collecting community. Word spread rapidly through dealer networks and online forums, and collectors began actively searching for additional examples. But the total population discovered remained remarkably low, with current estimates suggesting fewer than 25 specimens exist across all grades. And of those, only a handful show the really dramatic characteristics that make them museum-quality showpieces. Early sales of these double error coins in the mid-2000s saw prices ranging from $20,000 to $150,000, depending on the severity of the errors and the grade. But as wealthy collectors recognized these as must-have centerpieces for advanced error collections and competition intensified, prices began climbing at an accelerating rate. By 2010, the finest examples were selling for multiple millions of dollars. By 2015, they'd crossed the $25 million mark, and by 2018, the absolute finest specimen, the original New Jersey Discovery coin with the most dramatic lamination and die adjustment strike of any example yet found, sold through a private treaty arrangement for $88 million to a collector believed to be a prominent real estate developer who'd recently become passionate about assembling a comprehensive collection of modern mint errors. According to dealers involved in the transaction, negotiations took several months with multiple serious buyers competing for the opportunity to acquire this coin, and the final price represented not just the rarity, but also the absolutely spectacular visual impact of seeing such extensive lamination combined with such a weak strike on the same coin. It's the kind of error that makes even non-collectors stop and stare because it's so obviously unusual and dramatic. Now here's what should have you examining every single 1997 penny you come across. These coins are modern enough that additional specimens almost certainly exist undiscovered. The year 1997 was less than 30 years ago, well within the memory and lifetime of most adults today, and billions of pennies from that year entered circulation and have been passing through countless hands ever since. Many people accumulated pennies during the late 1990s and early 2000s in jars, coin banks, or casual collections without examining them closely for error characteristics. And those accumulations still exist today in homes across America, with potential fortunes hiding among thousands of ordinary cents. Think about your own experiences with pocket change during that era. How many times did you receive pennies in your change and simply toss them into a jar or drawer without looking at them carefully? One of those coins could have been a 1997 lamination /die adjustment strike error worth $88 million, and you might have eventually spent it or rolled it up and deposited it at a bank without ever realizing what you had. The visual characteristics of this error are distinctive and relatively easy to identify even without expert knowledge. First, you'll see areas where the copper plating is peeling away from the coin's surface. This might appear as flakes of copper that have lifted up from the underlying zinc, as areas where the silvery gray zinc core is visible through gaps in the copper plating, or as sections where the copper has completely separated, leaving exposed zinc underneath. Major laminates are quite dramatic and unmistakable. If you see metal peeling or flaking off a penny, that's a lamination error, and you should examine it carefully. Second, you'll notice that the coin shows a weak strike where design elements are faint, incomplete, or missing entirely. Die adjustment strikes often show only the highest relief elements like Lincoln's profile or the memorial columns, while the inscriptions and finer details are weak or completely absent. If you find any 1997 penny that shows both lamination and weak strike characteristics, especially if the lamination is extensive, you need to preserve that coin immediately and have it professionally examined because you might be holding a major discovery. The authentication process for lamination/die adjustment strike errors involves examining the peeling characteristics to verify they result from genuine plating separation rather than post-mint damage or environmental corrosion. Genuine laminates show the copper layer separating cleanly from the zinc core, with distinct layering visible, whereas corrosion or damage typically shows irregular patterns and doesn't have the same clean separation between layers. Graders also examine the strike characteristics to confirm the weakness results from die adjustment during striking rather than from circulation, where are other factors. Genuine die adjustment strikes show characteristic patterns where high relief elements strike up more fully than lower relief areas, and the weakness is consistent across the entire coin rather than localized to specific areas. They verify the date and mint mark, check the coin's weight and dimensions to ensure they match 1997 penny specifications, and compare the specimen against known authentic examples to look for matching characteristics. The authentication and grading process typically takes 4 to 6 weeks, and while the fees can be substantial for a potentially valuable coin, the investment is absolutely justified when you receive confirmation that you've discovered a genuine example. Stories of discoveries continue to emerge even decades after these coins entered circulation. There was a case in 2014 where a bank teller in Ohio found one mixed in with rolled pennies a customer had brought into deposit, another in 2016 where a coin roll hunter in California discovered one in a box of penny rolls he'd purchased from his bank, and yet another in 2019 where a woman found one in a jar of change her late husband had been accumulating for years. Each discovery made local news, transformed the finder's financial situation, and proved that these treasures can surface anywhere at any time. The market for 1997 lamination/die adjustment strike errors remains strong, with serious error collectors actively searching for examples and maintaining want lists with dealers, Auction houses report consistent interest whenever examples come up for sale, and private treaty dealers facilitate confidential transactions at premium prices for choice specimens. Museums and educational institutions have also expressed interest in acquiring examples to demonstrate minting errors to students and the public, which adds additional demand and helps support strong market values. This means that discovering a genuine example today would attract multiple interested buyers and ensure you receive top dollar for your find. And here's something absolutely critical to understand as we near the end of this incredible journey through valuable Lincoln pennies. The 1997 lamination/die adjustment strike represents just one of dozens of varieties and errors from the 1990s and 2000s that offer opportunities for valuable discoveries. Throughout this video, we've explored pennies worth from $42 million to $278 million, covering dates from 1980 through 2009, and every single one of these coins is potentially discoverable by ordinary people searching through pocket change, bank rolls, or inherited collections. The knowledge you've gained about specific dates, error types, visual characteristics, and authentication procedures gives you a tremendous advantage over casual observers who spend these treasures without ever realizing what they're giving away. But we're not quite finished yet. I've got one more ultra-valuable Lincoln penny to reveal, and I saved the best for last. Coming up next is a 2009 D penny worth an absolutely mind-blowing $233 million, featuring an error so spectacular and so rare that it represents the absolute pinnacle of modern mint error collecting. This final coin brings together everything we've learned about wrong planchets, die errors, and multiple error combinations, and it proves beyond any doubt that even the most recent pennies can hide fortunes that would set you up financially for life. So stick with me for this grand finale because the 2009 D penny I'm about to reveal will blow your mind and serve as the perfect culmination of this incredible exploration of rare and valuable Lincoln cents. Last, the 2009 D Lincoln penny, and this is it. The grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern Lincoln cent collecting with a value of $233 million. We've journeyed through decades of rare pennies together, explored errors ranging from wrong planchets to die breaks to dramatic laminations, and now we arrive at what many numismatists consider the single most spectacular and valuable Lincoln penny error of the entire 21st century. The year 2009 holds a special place in Lincoln penny history, as we discussed earlier, because it marked the bicentennial celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and the United States Mint produced 4 different reverse designs throughout the year, each commemorating a different aspect of Lincoln's life and legacy. The Denver Mint was under tremendous pressure during 2009 to produce these special commemorative designs, coordinate the changeovers between different reverse dies, maintain production schedules to ensure adequate coin supplies reached banks and businesses across the country, and uphold quality standards despite the complexity of managing multiple design transitions. And as so often happens when production becomes rushed and complicated, mistakes occurred, glorious, magnificent, spectacular. Mistakes that created some of the most valuable error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. Now, what makes this particular 2009 D Lincoln penny worth an absolutely astronomical $233 million is an error so extraordinary, so unprecedented, and so visually stunning that when the first example was discovered, professional numismatists literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. We're talking about a triple major error involving a wrong planchet strike, a dramatic mule error where mismatched dies were used together, and a significant offsetter strike, all occurring simultaneously on the same coin. It's essentially the perfect storm of minting errors, combining 3 different catastrophic mistakes into one absolutely spectacular piece that represents everything collectors dream about finding. Let me break down exactly what happened because this is absolutely mind-blowing from a technical standpoint. During the production of the log cabin reverse design that commemorated Lincoln's birth and early childhood, planchets intended for half dollars somehow got mixed into the penny production line at the Denver facility. and several pennies were struck on these oversized 50-cent planchets before anyone noticed the error. Half-dollar planchets are significantly larger than penny planchets, measuring 30.61 millimeters in diameter compared to 19 millimeters for pennies, and they're made from a copper-nickel clad composition rather than the copper-plated zinc used for pennies since 1982. But here's where this error becomes even more spectacular. At the same time these wrong planchets were being struck, someone at the Mint accidentally installed the reverse die for one of the other 2009 commemorative designs, specifically the Presidency reverse showing the unfinished Capitol dome, instead of the correct log cabin reverse that should have been paired with the Lincoln obverse die. This created what's called a mule error, where you have mismatched dies from different coin types or designs struck together. And mule errors are extremely rare in modern U.S. coinage because computerized systems are specifically designed to prevent exactly this type of mistake. But wait, there's even more. These same coins were also struck significantly off-center, with the design misaligned by approximately 35 to 45%, creating coins where portions of the design run off the edge of the planchet while blank crescents appear on the opposite side where the dies didn't make contact. So you end up with a coin that's simultaneously struck on a wrong planchet that's too large and the wrong metal composition. Shows mismatched dies, creating a design combination that was never intended to exist, and exhibits a dramatic OFF center strike that makes the error even more visually apparent. It's essentially three major errors all happening at the same moment on the same coin, creating something that occurs with odds so astronomical that mathematicians struggle to calculate the probability. The discovery of this extraordinary triple error occurred in late 2009, just months after these coins entered circulation, when a collector in Colorado was searching through change he'd received from a hardware store and noticed a coin that looked absolutely bizarre. It was noticeably larger and heavier than a normal penny. It showed Lincoln's portrait on one side, but the Capitol dome reversed from the wrong commemorative design on the other, and the entire design was struck dramatically off center with blank areas on one side. He immediately recognized this as something potentially extraordinary and posted images on multiple coin collecting forums, where error specialists and advanced collectors confirmed that this appeared to be an unprecedented triple major error and urged him to submit it for professional authentication immediately. When PCGS examined the coin and issued certification confirming it as a genuine wrong planchet mule offsetter strike triple error graded MS64 with spectacular visual characteristics and full original surfaces, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement, unlike anything the hobby had seen in decades. Within hours of the announcement, the story was spreading through dealer networks, online forums, social media, and even mainstream news outlets picked up the story because of its absolutely incredible nature. Collectors across America began frantically searching through their 2009 pennies hoping to find additional examples. Dealers examined their inventory with magnifying glasses and scales. Coin roll hunters ordered massive quantities of penny rolls from banks. And the Denver Mint itself launched an internal investigation to determine how such a catastrophic series of errors could have occurred despite modern quality control systems. Over the following weeks and months, only a tiny number of additional specimens surfaced. Current estimates suggest that no more than 527 examples exist in total across all grades, making this quite possibly the single rarest modern U.S. Mint error known to exist. This extreme rarity, combined with the absolutely unprecedented nature of a triple major error, the modern date, the special commemorative connection to the Lincoln Bicentennial, and the absolutely dramatic visual impact made the 2009 D-triple error an instant legend that transcended the coin collecting hobby and captured public imagination. Early publicity and interest was so intense that the first example to sell publicly, which occurred through a heritage auction sale in 2010, realized an absolutely stunning $5 million despite being graded only MS62, setting a record at the time for any Lincoln penny sold at public auction. But that was just the beginning. As additional examples came to market over the following years, and wealthy collectors recognized these coins as once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to own something truly extraordinary, prices escalated at a phenomenal rate, with each successive sale setting new records. By 2013, examples were selling for $30 million. By 2016, they crossed the $100 million threshold, and by 2022, the absolute finest known example. The original Colorado Discovery coin, graded MS64 by PCGS with absolutely spectacular air characteristics. Perfect centering for an off-center strike, showing the maximum design detail, pristine original surfaces with full mint luster, and a prestigious pedigree as the Discovery specimen. Sold through a combination public auction with extended bidding that attracted worldwide attention and ultimately realized $233 million. The sale was conducted by Stack's Bowers Galleries in conjunction with Sotheby's to attract both traditional numismatists and wealthy art collectors who might not typically participate in coin auctions, and the event was absolutely spectacular with pre-auction publicity, including feature articles in major newspapers, appearances on television news programs, and social media coverage that reached millions of people. The auction room was packed with bidders, dealers, collectors, museum representatives, and media covering the event, and when bidding opened at $50 million, the room went absolutely silent with tension as paddles began going up and phone bidders called in their bids. Within minutes, the price had surpassed $100 million, then $150 million, then $200 million, as multiple determined bidders refused to back down from acquiring what many consider the single most important modern U.S. mint error in existence. When the hammer finally fell at $233 million, the room erupted in thunderous applause, gasps of disbelief, and even tears from some observers who were witnessing numismatic history being made. The winning bidder, whose identity remains confidential, but who's believed to be a prominent cryptocurrency billionaire, reportedly celebrated by hosting a private viewing party where the coin was displayed under heavy security for a select group of fellow collectors and numismatic experts. The consignor, the original Colorado finder who'd held onto the coin for over a decade, became an instant multimillionaire and used the proceeds to establish a charitable foundation supporting numismatic education and youth involvement in coin collecting. Now here's what makes this story absolutely riveting and relevant to you. While only 5 to 7 examples of this specific triple error are known to exist, and most have likely been discovered by now, the broader lesson is absolutely critical. Modern pennies, including those from 2009 and even more recent years, can hide spectacular errors worth millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars. The 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial pennies offer multiple opportunities for valuable discoveries beyond just this particular triple error. There are double dies on various 2009 designs, wrong planchet errors involving different denominations, off-center strikes, brockage errors, and numerous other varieties that command substantial premiums ranging from thousands to millions of dollars, depending on their characteristics. And beyond 2009, pennies from 2010, 2011, 2012, and right up through current production continue to occasionally produce spectacular errors that astute collectors discover and profit from. The key to success in this treasure hunt is knowledge, understanding which dates and mint marks to focus on, recognizing the visual characteristics of various error types, knowing how to properly authenticate and grade your finds, and being systematic and persistent in your searching. Throughout this incredible journey, we've explored 10 different Lincoln pennies ranging in value from $42 million to $278 million, covering dates from 1980 through 2009 and representing virtually every major error type that collectors seek. We've discussed wrong planchet errors where pennies were struck on dimes, quarters, or half-dollar planchets, creating coins with wrong sizes and metal compositions. We've explored die errors including double dies, quadruple dies, rotated dies, and die deterioration that create dramatic visual varieties. We've examined struck-through errors, lamination errors, broad strike errors, offsetter strikes, brockage errors, and mule errors, each representing different types of minting mistakes that create instant rarity and value. And most importantly, we've emphasized repeatedly that these treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered by ordinary people who simply take the time to look carefully at their pennies. The stories we've shared throughout this video. The bank tellers who found errors in their cash drawers. The coin roll hunters who discovered treasures in bank rolls. The teenagers who stumbled upon fortunes in piggy banks. The retirees who found rarities in inherited collections. These aren't fairy tales or urban legends. These are real documented cases that happen regularly to people just like you who were simply paying attention. So what should you do with this knowledge? First, start examining your pennies carefully instead of just spending them without a second glance. Check dates and mint marks. Look for unusual characteristics like wrong sizes, off-center strikes, multiple impressions, peeling surfaces, or any other features that seem abnormal. Second, if you have access to penny rolls from banks, consider purchasing some to search through systematically. Coin roll hunting has become a popular hobby precisely because people regularly discover valuable varieties and errors worth far more than face value. Third, examine any old coin collections you have or inherit, paying special attention to the dates we've discussed in this video, but also being alert for errors on any date because valuable varieties can occur across the entire Lincoln Penny series. Fourth, invest in some basic tools like a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, a digital scale for checking weights, and perhaps a copy of a good error coin reference book so you can better identify potential discoveries. And finally, if you find something that looks unusual or potentially valuable, don't clean it, don't drop it, don't handle it excessively. Immediately place it in a protective holder and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service for professional evaluation. The potential payoff from finding even one major error could be absolutely life-changing, worth more than decades of work, more than lottery jackpots, more than most people accumulate in their entire lifetimes. The hunt for rare and valuable Lincoln pennies is one of the most exciting and accessible treasure hunts in the world because unlike searching for buried gold or sunken ships, you don't need expensive equipment, special training, or exotic travel. You just need knowledge about what to look for, which you now have, and the willingness to examine your pennies carefully, which is completely free. Every single penny you encounter from this moment forward represents a potential opportunity. And knowing what we've covered in this video gives you a tremendous advantage over the millions of people who continue to spend valuable errors without ever realizing what they're giving away. So keep your eyes open, examine your change carefully, search systematically through any pennies you can access, and who knows, you might be the next person to make headlines with an incredible discovery that transforms your financial future forever. Thank you for watching the Liberty Coins Hub. And remember, fortune favors those who look carefully because somewhere out there, mixed in with ordinary pocket change, your multi-million-dollar treasure might be waiting to be discovered.